Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The courtroom was filled with unbearable tension as the judge returned to his seat, the sound of his gavel echoing through the room like thunder. Every eye turned toward him, waiting for the final decision that would change Willow's life forever. Willow sat beside Michael, her hands trembling in her lap as she tried to steady her breathing. She had faced countless battles, leukemia, the bone marrow transplant, Nina's interference, but this was different. This time, her entire future was hanging in the balance, and no medical treatment could save her from what was coming next. Michael leaned closer, whispering, "No matter what happens, I'm right here. We'll get through this together." His words were meant to comfort, but his voice wavered slightly. He was terrified too. Across the courtroom, Nina sat silently, her face pale but determined. She had fought hard for her rights as Willow's biological mother, believing she deserved a place in her daughter's life despite everything that had happened. But the damage between them ran deep, and today, the judge would decide whether Willow's plea to keep Nina away from her family would stand, or if Nina would finally get what she had been fighting for. Willow's attorney stood as the judge began to speak, his tone calm but heavy. "This case has been emotional for everyone involved. The court has reviewed all evidence, heard all testimonies, and considered the well-being of the family as the top priority. Ms. Tate Corinthos, your recovery has been remarkable, and it's clear you have a strong support system. However, Ms. Reeves is your biological mother, and her rights cannot be dismissed lightly." The judge paused, glancing down at his notes as if weighing the next words with extreme care. After careful consideration, this court has made a final decision regarding the visitation and custody matters concerning Ms. Willow Tate Corinthos and Ms. Nina Reeves. Nina's breath caught in her throat. She clutched her attorney's arm, eyes wide with anticipation. Willow, however, lowered her gaze, silently praying for mercy. "Please," she whispered under her breath, so softly only Michael could hear. He took her hand, squeezing it tightly. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the judge continued. "Given the circumstances surrounding past incidents, Ms. Reeves' interference with Ms. Tate Corinthos' medical care, and the emotional distress caused by the actions leading up to Ms. Tate Corinthos' hospitalization, the court rules that Ms. Reeves' visitation rights will remain suspended until further notice." The words hit like a wave. Nina gasped, covering her mouth in shock. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "That's not fair. She's my daughter." Her voice cracked, desperation pouring out. But the judge wasn't finished. However, he said firmly, "This decision will be reviewed in 6 months, pending demonstrable behavioral improvement and family mediation efforts. Ms. Reeves, the court urges you to seek reconciliation through counseling, not confrontation." Tears welled in Willow's eyes. Relief and sorrow intertwined as she turned toward Michael. "It's over," she murmured, though her voice was faint. Michael wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "It's over for now," he said quietly. "You can breathe again." But even as she nodded, Willow's heart ached. She never wanted things to end like this. She never wanted to see her mother broken, no matter how much pain Nina had caused. Nina stood slowly, trembling. "Your Honor, please," she pleaded, her voice raw. "I've made mistakes, but I only wanted to be part of Willow's life. I almost lost her once, I can't lose her again." The judge sighed, clearly moved but unmoved in decision. "Ms. Reeves, this court understands your intentions. But your actions have consequences. The path to redemption begins with accountability." Nina nodded numbly, tears streaking down her face as she sat back down. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered like vultures, ready to twist every word. Michael shielded Willow as they exited, guiding her through the crowd. "No comments," he said firmly to the press. "This is a family matter." Willow's head was spinning. "I didn't want this to get so ugly," she whispered. "I just wanted peace for our family." Michael looked at her with compassion. "You did what you had to do. You protected our kids. That doesn't make you the villain." Back inside, Nina remained seated long after the room had emptied. Sunny approached cautiously. He had stayed in the back the entire time, not wanting to make things worse. "Nina," he said softly, "I'm sorry." She turned toward him, pain flashing in her eyes. "You tried to warn me," she said bitterly. "You told me to be patient, but I didn't listen. I thought I could fix everything by forcing my way in." Sunny sighed. "You wanted to be close to your daughter. I get that. But Willow needs space, and you need to heal too." She looked down at her trembling hands. "How do I heal when I've lost her again?" she whispered. Sunny hesitated before replying, "You don't give up. You just start over. You take this time to show her that you can change, that you're not the same person who made those choices." Nina let out a shaky breath. "And what if it's too late?" Sunny's eyes softened. "It's never too late if you mean it." Meanwhile, at the Corinthos estate, Willow and Michael sat on the patio, the late afternoon sun dipping behind the trees. Willow looked distant, her thoughts scattered. "Do you think I did the right thing?" she asked quietly. "Maybe I should have let her have a chance to see the kids. Maybe this will only make her hate me more." Michael reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Willow, this wasn't about hate. It was about safety and peace. You've been through enough. You deserve to breathe without drama." Willow smiled faintly. "I know, but I still feel guilty. She's my mother. Even after everything, part of me wanted her to hug me and tell me she's proud." Michael took her hand. "You can want that and still protect yourself. That's not weakness. That's strength." At Carly's house later that evening, she poured herself a glass of wine as Sunny dropped by. "Rough day," Carly muttered. Sunny nodded, taking a seat. "Yeah." The judge made it official, Nina lost visitation rights. Carly raised her eyebrows, unsurprised. "She brought that on herself. You can't manipulate people and expect the court to ignore it." Sunny sighed. "She's hurting, though. I could see it in her eyes. She really loves Willow." Carly set down her glass, softening just a bit. "Love isn't enough if it's toxic. Maybe this will finally make her see she needs to change." Later that night, Nina sat alone at her apartment, staring at the photo of Willow holding Amelia. She traced her daughter's smile with her finger, whispering, "I just wanted to be part of your life." The silence was deafening. Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ava. "I heard. I'm sorry, Nina. Come by the gallery tomorrow. You shouldn't be alone." Nina stared at the message for a long moment before replying, "Thank you. I might." She knew Ava would listen, but she also knew no one could fix what had been broken except herself. Back at the Corinthos home, Willow peeked in on Wiley and Amelia sleeping peacefully. The sight filled her with gratitude and heartbreak. She whispered softly, "You're safe. You're loved. That's all that matters." When she turned, she found Michael leaning in the doorway. "They're lucky to have you," he said with a gentle smile. She walked into his arms, resting her head against his chest. "I just hope someday Nina understands why I did this." Days later, Nina visited the cemetery, placing flowers on the grave of Nellie, her other daughter, the one she had lost before even knowing the truth. "I messed up again, didn't I?" she said softly. "I keep losing the people I love." Her voice broke as she knelt. "But I'm going to try. For Willow. For you. I'll be better." The wind rustled through the trees as if whispering back, offering a faint comfort she desperately needed. In the weeks that followed, Willow focused on her family, returning to work at the hospital part-time. Her strength was slowly coming back, and her spirit was lighter. But every so often, she would catch herself staring at the hospital corridors, remembering the day Nina had almost cost her everything. It wasn't hate she felt, it was sadness. She hoped someday forgiveness would come, but she wasn't there yet. At the same time, Nina began therapy, just as the judge had advised. She opened up about her past, her mistakes, her desperate need to be loved. It was painful, but healing had to start somewhere. During one session, her therapist asked, "What do you hope will happen?" Nina smiled sadly. "I just want Willow to look at me one day and not see the woman who hurt her, but the mother who finally learned how to love her right." Months passed, and though they remained distant, a quiet understanding began to grow. Willow didn't respond to Nina's letters right away, but she didn't return them either. She kept them in a drawer, each one softer in tone, more sincere. One afternoon, Willow opened one of the letters. Nina had written, "I know I can't undo the pain I caused, but I'm learning to be the kind of person you can trust. I'll wait as long as it takes." Tears filled Willow's eyes. She whispered, "Maybe someday." The decision the judge made wasn't just a ruling, it was the start of something new. For Willow, it was a chance to live without fear. For Nina, it was the opportunity to rebuild, to face her flaws, and to earn redemption. And for Michael, it was a reminder that love sometimes means standing firm even when your heart wants to bend. The courtroom battle might have ended, but the emotional journey for all of them was far from over. In Port Charles, nothing ever stays peaceful for long, but for the first time in months, Willow felt a sense of calm. The storm had passed, and though the scars remained, there was light ahead. As she looked out at the horizon, holding Amelia close, she whispered, "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." And somewhere across town, Nina whispered those same words to herself, hoping that one day, fate would give her another chance to make things right. Weeks after the judge's ruling, life in Port Charles began to settle, at least on the surface. But beneath that calm, emotions still rippled between the Corinthos and Reeves families. Willow tried her best to focus on work and her children, though every now and then, her thoughts drifted back to that tense courtroom. She could still hear Nina's voice breaking, pleading for forgiveness. It haunted her, even in quiet moments. One morning at General Hospital, Elizabeth found Willow in the break room, staring absently at her coffee. "Rough day?" Liz asked gently. Willow blinked out of her thoughts and sighed. "It's been complicated. The judge's decision should have brought closure, but all I feel is this mix of guilt and relief." Liz sat across from her. "That's normal. You went through hell, Willow. You're still healing, not just physically but emotionally." Willow nodded slowly. "I know, but every time I think about Nina, I wonder if I did the right thing. Maybe I could have found another way." Elizabeth leaned forward, voice steady. "You're allowed to protect yourself. You gave her chances, more than most people would have. But she has to earn her place in your life, not demand it." Willow gave a small smile. "You sound like you've been through this before." Liz chuckled softly. "You have no idea." They shared a quiet laugh before the intercom called for a code blue. Willow jumped up instantly, her instincts kicking in. For a brief moment, she was back in her element, a nurse, a healer, not a woman haunted by family drama. Across town, Nina stood inside Crimson, staring out the window overlooking the city. The magazine had always been her empire, the one thing she could control. But now, even that felt hollow. She flipped through the latest issue, her mind not really on the pages. Maxie walked in, carrying a stack of papers. "You missed the meeting," she said lightly, though concern was clear in her tone. Nina sighed. "I know. I just couldn't face everyone today. Feels like all I do lately is disappoint people." Maxie set the papers down. "You're not the only one who's made mistakes, Nina. The difference is, you're actually trying to fix yours. That counts for something." Nina gave a weak smile. "The court doesn't think so." "Neither does Willow." Maxie folded her arms. "Maybe not yet. But people in this town have forgiven worse, trust me. Keep showing her that you're serious. Actions talk louder than court hearings." Sunny arrived a little later, stepping quietly into the office. Nina looked up, surprised. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. Sunny shrugged. "I wanted to check on you. How are you holding up?" She sighed, closing the magazine. "I've been better. Every time I close my eyes, I see her sitting there in that courtroom, afraid of me. I never wanted to be that kind of mother. Sunny nodded. I know you didn't. But sometimes love makes people act out of fear. You can't change what happened, Nina. You can only show her you've learned from it. She met his gaze, her eyes glistening. Do you think she'll ever forgive me? He hesitated, then said quietly, I think forgiveness takes time. But if you keep trying, maybe someday she will. Meanwhile, Michael had his own struggles. Though he stood firmly by Willow's side, he couldn't ignore how much the court case had taken out of her. He found her one evening sitting on the couch, staring at family photos. You're thinking about her again, he said softly, sitting beside her. She didn't deny it. Yeah. I keep wondering if she's okay. As much as I hated what she did, I don't want her to be alone. Michael took her hand. That's what makes you who you are. You've got this heart that just doesn't stop caring even when people hurt you. But don't lose yourself trying to fix her. Willow nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. I'm just tired of fighting. I want peace, Michael. For us, for the kids, for her too. Days turned into weeks, and the people of Port Charles began to notice small changes in Nina. She started volunteering quietly at a local charity, staying out of the gossip mill. When Carly ran into her one afternoon at the Metro Court, even she was taken aback. Didn't expect to see you here, Carly said cautiously. Nina gave a polite nod. Just grabbing coffee. No drama, I promise. Carly smirked. That's a first. But then she noticed something different. Nina's tone was calm, not defensive. You really are trying, huh? Carly asked. Nina looked down. I have to. If I don't change, I'll lose everything that ever mattered. For a moment, Carly's expression softened. Look, I'm not your biggest fan, but if you're serious about getting better, then maybe that's a start. Willow's tough, but she's not cruel. If she sees a real change, she might open the door again. Nina looked at her hopefully. You think so? Carly shrugged. I think miracles happen in Port Charles more than anywhere else. Later, Nina sat alone in her apartment, replaying Carly's words. For once, they didn't sting, they inspired her. She picked up a pen and began writing another letter to Willow. I don't expect forgiveness, she wrote, but I want you to know that I'm working on being someone you can be proud of. I see now that love without respect isn't love at all. I'm learning. At the hospital, Willow received the letter a few days later. She hesitated before opening it. When she finished reading, she sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she whispered, maybe she's really changing. Elizabeth, who happened to walk in, caught the tail end. Talking about Nina? Willow nodded. She's been writing. This one felt different. Honest. Liz smiled. Then maybe it's time to stop looking at her as the enemy. People can change, Willow. You know that better than most. That night, Willow sat by the fireplace, watching the flames dance. Michael joined her, handing her a cup of tea. You've been quiet tonight, he said gently. Willow smiled faintly. I think I might go see her. Michael looked surprised. Nina? Willow nodded. I don't know what I'll say. Maybe I just need to see if she's really changed. The next day, she stood outside Nina's door, her heart pounding. She almost turned back twice before finally knocking. When the door opened, Nina froze, her eyes wide in disbelief. Willow, she breathed. Willow nodded, her voice trembling. I didn't come to fight. I just wanted to talk. Nina stepped aside, tears welling up. Of course. Please, come in. The air was thick with emotion as they sat down, neither knowing how to begin. Finally, Willow said softly, I read your letter. I can tell you're trying. I appreciate that. Nina clasped her hands tightly. I meant every word. I don't want to push anymore. I just want you to know I love you, no matter what. Willow nodded, her eyes glistening. I know. And maybe someday we can figure this out. But I need to take things slow. I can't just forget what happened. Nina's voice broke. I understand. I'll wait. However long it takes. When Willow left, the air felt lighter than it had in months. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, there was hope. Later that night, she told Michael what happened. It wasn't easy, she admitted, but it felt right. Maybe this is the first step toward healing. Michael smiled. I'm proud of you. That took courage. Willow leaned against him, exhaling deeply. Maybe the judge made the right decision after all. It forced both of us to really look at ourselves. In Port Charles, life kept moving forward. Families healed, hearts broke and mended again, and old wounds slowly began to fade. The court's decision wasn't the end of Willow's story, it was the turning point. The moment when she learned that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that lead to peace. As the night sky settled over the city, Willow whispered to herself, this isn't the end. It's a new beginning. And somewhere across town, Nina whispered the same words, hoping that fate and forgiveness might one day bring them back together as mother and daughter, finally at peace. The following weekend, the atmosphere in Port Charles was unusually calm. For months, emotions had run high between the Corinthos and Reeves families, but now there was a sense of quiet and uneasy peace that felt fragile but hopeful. Willow spent the morning with Michael and the kids, watching Wiley and Amelia play in the yard. The laughter of their children brought her comfort, reminding her why she had fought so hard for stability. Yet deep down, a small part of her still ached for something unfinished, a part of her that missed the connection she never truly had with her mother. Michael noticed the distant look in her eyes as she watched the children. You're thinking about Nina again, aren't you? He asked gently. Willow smiled faintly. You always know. She sighed. I keep wondering if she's really going to change this time. I want to believe her, Michael. I really do. But it's hard. Michael nodded slowly. It's okay to hope. Just don't let hope turn into guilt. You've already done your part. The rest is up to her. Later that afternoon, at Crimson, Nina found herself buried in work, trying to keep her mind occupied. But no matter how many emails she answered or how many calls she took, her thoughts drifted to Willow's visit. That brief conversation had stirred something deep inside her, hope, fear, and maybe a little redemption. She picked up her phone several times to text Sunny but stopped each time, unsure what to say. Finally, she typed, Willow came by. It went better than I expected. Sunny replied within minutes, that's good news, Nina. Just take it slow. Don't push. She smiled softly. I won't. I'm learning. A few hours later, Sunny stopped by her office unannounced. I wanted to see that smile in person, he said with a teasing grin. Nina looked up, laughing quietly. You always know when I need company. Sunny shrugged. You've been through a lot. It's about time something went right. She sighed, closing a file on her desk. It's strange. For the first time, I'm not trying to control everything. I'm just letting things happen. Sunny nodded approvingly. That's growth. Maybe the judge's ruling was what you needed. It forced you to look at things differently. Nina leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. Yeah, maybe. I hated that decision at first, but now. I think it saved me from losing her completely. If the court had forced her to see me, she would have resented it. Now, if she chooses to, it'll be real. That same evening, Willow sat outside under the stars. She thought about her mother, about Nina sitting alone, trying to rebuild her life. She remembered the hurt, the betrayal, but she also remembered the way Nina had looked at her during their last meeting, genuine, remorseful, vulnerable. It wasn't manipulation this time. It was honesty. When Michael joined her, she turned to him and said, "You know what's strange? I think I actually believe her. For the first time, I believe she means it when she says she's trying to change." Michael looked at her carefully. "Do you think you're ready to forgive her?" Willow hesitated. "Not yet. But maybe I'm ready to stop being angry." A week later, Willow stopped by the coffeehouse to meet Alexis, who had been following her story closely for The Invader. "How's everything going since the ruling?" Alexis asked, sipping her drink. Willow smiled softly. "Better. I think we all needed that reality check. I'm still processing everything, but I'm starting to feel free again." Alexis nodded. "It's good to hear that. You know, forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone back in, it just means letting go of the pain they left behind." Willow smiled knowingly. "You sound like someone who's been there." Alexis chuckled. "More times than I care to admit." Meanwhile, Nina visited the church in Port Charles, sitting quietly in one of the back pews. It wasn't about religion, it was about peace. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Please, just give me the strength to be the person Willow deserves to know." She didn't notice the priest approach until he spoke gently. "Sometimes the hardest prayers are the ones we say for ourselves." Nina opened her eyes, nodding. "I've made a lot of mistakes. I hurt people I love." The priest smiled kindly. "Then you're human. Redemption isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance." She took a deep breath. "Then I guess I'll keep trying." That night, she wrote another letter to Willow, but this time she didn't send it. Instead, she tucked it away in a drawer, a reminder of the promises she was making to herself. Over the next few months, both women began to rebuild their lives. Willow focused on her nursing career and family, while Nina poured herself into charity work, helping children who had been separated from their families. Slowly, word began to spread around town that Nina Reeves was changing, not for attention, but from the heart. Even Carly noticed. One day at the Metro Court, she watched as Nina spoke kindly to a group of volunteers, laughing lightly, genuinely. When Nina walked by her table, Carly stopped her. "I've got to hand it to you," Carly said cautiously. "You're different lately." Nina smiled politely. "I'm trying. I know I have a long way to go." Carly nodded. "Well, keep it up. Port Charles could use fewer grudges and more growth." A few days later, Michael and Willow took the kids to the park. As they watched Wiley play, Willow's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was simple, "I hope you and the kids are doing well. I'm proud of you. Nina." Willow stared at the screen for a long time before replying, "Thank you. We're doing okay. I hope you are too." It wasn't a long conversation. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. As the weeks passed, the tension that had once defined their relationship began to ease. When Willow later saw Nina at General Hospital dropping off a donation for pediatric patients, she smiled for the first time in her direction. Nina noticed and smiled back, just a small, hesitant exchange, but one filled with meaning. In another corner of the hospital, Elizabeth watched the moment unfold and whispered to Epiphany's photo hanging on the memorial wall, "Looks like miracles still happen here." The change didn't go unnoticed by Sonny either. That night at his penthouse, he told Nina, "You're earning it. Not forcing it, not demanding it, earning it. That's how you'll get her back." Nina looked down, her voice soft. "I used to think love was about possession, about being part of every moment. But now I see, love's about patience. About giving someone space to heal, even if it means waiting in silence." Sonny smiled proudly. "Now that's the Nina I always knew you could be." Months later, the court scheduled a review of Nina's visitation rights. This time, the atmosphere was very different. There was no shouting, no bitterness, no tears of rage. Just quiet understanding. The judge looked at both women and said, "It appears there's been significant progress. Ms. Reeves, your behavior and efforts at reconciliation are noted. Ms. Tate Corinthos, do you wish to comment?" Willow stood slowly. Her voice was calm but strong. Your Honor, I believe my mother deserves another chance. Not full custody, not yet, but supervised visits. She's shown me that she's willing to change, and I want my children to know that people can grow from their mistakes. The courtroom murmured in surprise. Nina's eyes filled instantly. Willow, she whispered, her voice breaking. The judge nodded approvingly. Then it is so ordered. Supervised visitation will resume effective immediately. After the hearing, the two women stood face to face outside the courthouse. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Willow stepped forward and hugged Nina gently. Let's take it one day at a time, she said softly. Nina held her tightly, tears falling freely. One day at a time, she repeated. As they pulled apart, Willow smiled. Welcome back, Mom. Those 3 words were everything Nina had ever wanted to hear. Later, as the sun set over Port Charles, the city seemed a little quieter, a little warmer. Michael watched from a distance, holding Amelia, as Willow and Nina walked together down the courthouse steps. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a new beginning, proof that even the deepest wounds could heal with time, humility, and love. And in true General Hospital fashion, life in Port Charles continued, filled with hope, heartbreak, and the promise that redemption is always possible, no matter how impossible it once seemed. Willow's fate had been decided, but her future, and her mother's, were finally theirs to shape together.